All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Colorado HOA Information and Resource Center's HOA Forum on HOA complaints. I'm very excited to be here today with you all, sharing the ins and outs of our complaints process and how we track HOA complaints in general. So for today's webinar, we will be enabling chat. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions pop up, feel free to drop them down in the chat and we'll do our best to respond. As always, the information provided during this presentation is for educational purposes only and is not meant to provide, nor should it be construed as, legal advice. Any legal questions should be directed to a qualified attorney. Again, we are the Colorado HOA Information and Resource Center, a program of the Division of Real Estate housed within the Department of Regulatory Agencies, or DORA for short. My name is Nick Altman. I'm the HOA Information Officer. With me today is David Donnelly, the Division of Real Estate's Education, Communication, and Policy Manager, as well as Amanda Lopez, our HOA Program Assistant. Welcome, David and Amanda.
Thanks so much, Nick. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Hey, Amanda, would you like to jump on and say hi real quick?
Yeah, I'm trying to. It says it's stop. I can't put my video on for whatever reason. So I'm trying to put the video on, but it says I cannot start my video because the host stopped it. So, host,
right.
Can you allow me?
We'll see if we can get that figured out. But so what is the HOA Information and Resource Center? As most of you know, what we do is we provide information to homeowners regarding their basic rights and responsibilities under the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, or abbreviated KIOA for short. We gather, analyze, and report information through complaints and HOA registrations. We create resource materials. We provide educations and forums. We provide a website with information for the public. We register HOAs pursuant to Section 3833.3 401 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. And we also provide an annual report to the legislature. What we do not do is we are not a regulatory program. We do not mediate or arbitrate. We cannot provide legal advice. We do not act as an advocate. We cannot assess fines or penalties. And we do not enforce an HOA's failure to register. So, the statutory authority of the HOA Information Office is found in Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 12-10-801. Broadly speaking, we aim to provide information and resources for homeowners and board members in common interest communities. Common interest community means real estate described in a declaration with respect to which a person, by virtue of such person's ownership of a unit, is obligated to pay for real estate taxes, insurance premiums, maintenance, or improvement of other real estate described in a declaration. We assist the public in understanding their rights and responsibilities under KIOA. The Information Office is mandated to register common interest communities according to Section 401 of KIOA. And finally, we track inquiries and complaints and report annually to the division director regarding the number and types of inquiries and complaints received. The HOA Information and Resource Center does not have any investigatory or enforcement capability to address complaints. So there are three primary ways the HOA Center receives complaints. The first is by mail, by completing a physical complaint form. The second is by email. And the third is online, by completing our online complaint form. So our physical complaint form, which I'll discuss more in depth, can be mailed to the Division of Real Estate, HOA Information Resource Center, 1560 Broadway, Suite 925, Denver, Colorado 80202. While we aim to process complaints as quickly as possible, longer processing times can naturally be expected when compared to online or email submittals. And here's a link where you can download a copy of the physical complaint form. For email, you can attach the physical complaint form as a PDF and email it to Dora_Dre DRE_HOA inquiries at state.co.us. Finally, the quickest and most efficient means of filing an HOA complaint with the HOA Center is by completing an online complaint form, which I'll also discuss in more detail. Here's a link to begin the process of filing an online complaint. So, how to complete the physical and online complaint forms. So our physical complaint form begins with section 1, as you can see on the right here. Information about you, the complainant. You'll enter your first and last name. Please note the division also accepts anonymous complaints. You might file an anonymous complaint if you're concerned about fears of potential retaliation. If you like to file an anonymous complaint, just leave this section blank. And also please note that the HOA Information Office, we won't send your complaint to the respondent or the HOA in this case. So you'll enter your mailing address, your telephone number, your email address, your property address, which is the subject of your complaint. Are you the owner or tenant? And if you're a board member, you can simply mark owner. Section 2 of the form is information about the HOA, which is the subject of this complaint. The more information you can provide here, the better we're able to track your complaint. First question is, does the management company manage your HOA? Sometimes it can be a bit tricky to differentiate between the HOA and the management company. If you're not sure, you can just leave it blank. Who is your complaint about? We call this the, we call this party the respondent. What is the name of your HOA? Complaints are tracked by the association name, even if the respondent is a manager or declarant. It's advisable to list the legal name of your HOA, as is shown with the Colorado Secretary of State. This allows us to more quickly track down an HOA and ensure that we have identified the correct association. And you can search for it with a link there on the slide. You'll list the address of your HOA. Again, we prefer you use the address as shown on the Colorado Secretary of State website. Enter the HOA's telephone number, not yours, if you know it. If you don't, that's okay. You can just leave it blank. And then you'll mark the type of your HOA. We plan communities we generally think of as single family homes. Colorado doesn't have too many cooperatives. And if it's a condo or a timeshare, you would just mark that appropriately. Estimated number of units, of units that are located in your HOA. Just a best guess estimate is fine in this case. And there's a link where you can look up most of the information above. Moving forward here. Section 3 of the form is details about your complaints. Here we really encourage you to take the time to organize your thoughts and information. The more clear you can make your narrative, the better we can follow your complaint. If possible, try and include broad general topics like board communications, records, or assessments, for example, to help us properly track your complaint. Again, this is the physical complaint form. So moving on to our online complaint form, here's a link that'll take you straight to the file your complaint button on our website. So click and file a complaint will take you to this next page where you'll search for an identified respondent, which would be your HOA. For purposes of this demonstration, we'll use a hypothetical HOA that I created named Nick's Incredible HOA to follow along in the system. So your first step is to type in the business name DBA field, the legal name of your HOA. Again, you can search for the legal name of the HOA on the Colorado Secretary of State website, or alternatively, usually the HOA specific declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions will also show the legal name of the HOA. So a big tip here is you can also just use keywords. If you maybe sort of know the general name of your HOA, you can enter 1 or 2 keywords into the business name DBA field, and the system will most likely be able to find it. For example, in my example, Nick's Incredible HOA, if you just typed in Nick, the system will return all results with the keyword Nick in it, and then you just click search. So you might be asking, well, Nick, what if the HOA is not registered, or if I can't find it in the system? No matter what I search for, I keep getting return the result, no records found for the criteria entered. Well, I'm actually very glad you asked that, because you can click the switch to manual entry as shown below there and enter as much information to the best of your knowledge. Again, it's not quite as good as entering the legal name in the DBA field, but if you give us enough information, we should be able to identify your HOA. And as a quick reminder, your HOA doesn't need to be registered with the HOA Center in order for you to file a complaint against it. So, assuming you found the legal name of your HOA, here we go, we can see Nick's Incredible HOA here. You would just click Detail and then Advance. Once you click Detail, review the HOA information is correct and click File a Complaint, as you can see with the green arrow there. Once you click File a Complaint, it'll take you to this screen where it'll prompt you to click on a license number. In this case, you'll click HOA.000056452. This is just a number for us to track HOAs in our system. And then you'll just click that license number. The next step starts a sequence of tabs that you can see on the left-hand side here. This tab is called File a Complaint Against a Licensed Professional Business or HOA. This first tab basically just asks you to verify the HOA information one more time and click Next. Once you click Next, a new tab opens up on the left, this one entitled Complainant. This page will ask you for your individual name, address, and email address as you scroll down there. You might be wondering about the business radio dial. You might select this if you're an HOA or perhaps a LLC, and you wanted to file a complaint about your manager, your community manager, for example. So once you're done on this screen, you'll just scroll down and you'll click Next. This next tab, titled Complainant License Information, contains 14 questions, which I'll kind of go through here pretty quickly. None of the responses here will make a material difference in the tracking of your complaints, but I'll go through them anyway, just for clarity's sakes. Number 1 and 2 are for licensed real estate brokers, and you don't need to fill them out. You can just click Next. Number 3 and 4 is a duplicate entry in our system, which you can leave blank and proceed directly to number 5 here. You'll enter the details of your complaints here. Remember to take the time to organize your thoughts and all information regarding your complaint, and then you'll just click Next. And you do not need to include witnesses. Number 6 is uploading any documentation you feel would be helpful to the HOA Information Office and understanding the issues surrounding your complaint, though it's not required. You'll enter your telephone number, also not required, for number 7, and then you'll just click next. Hopefully these green arrows are making sense. The next set of questions is more intended for our real estate broker investigation side, but you can click yes or no and proceed for numbers 8, 9, and 10. Number 11 is, have you participated in mediation, arbitration, or a settlement agreement to a civil case? Answer the question and proceed. Uploading documentation is an option, but is not required. And you'll click next when you're done with that. Number 14 is, if you have an attorney, witness, or other persons with knowledge of this complaint, please list them in the grid below. Click next once done. And on this next slide, or next page, you'll review all information for accuracy and click next. And alas, you've made it to the last page, finally. You'll click finish, and you'll receive an acknowledgement of your complaint upon processing. So that's how you file a complaint online. And let's talk a little bit about complaint processing in our office. We read every complaint. Your complaint is dissected, we like to call, into various category types, which I'll mention in a bit here. We track and analyze your complaint for trends and patterns, which is then presented to the division director and state general assembly annually through our annual reports, which are posted on our website. So virtually every complaint that we receive in the HOA Center fits into one or more of the following complaint types: communication with homeowners or board, elections and voting, reserves, liens, insurance, nuisance, conflicts of interest, xeriscaping or landscaping, parking, miscellaneous such as solar panels, pets, or pools, diversion, theft, fraud, misappropriation, deception, discrimination, meetings, harassment, retaliation, or intimidation, failure to produce records, not following governing documents, excessive assessments or fees, accounting, finances, improper selective enforcement of covenants, regulatory compliance, registration, health and safety, and not performing repairs or maintenance. If you're personally experiencing any of the following issues, we encourage you to file a complaint. Oh, and I forgot to clarent there. So what are some examples of these category types that might lead us to fit your complaint into one of these complaint categories? Well, let's talk about each one. So beginning with communications, the first most commonly received complaint that we receive here. Some examples might include, excuse me, my board HOA never responds to my questions or concerns. The board never informs those residents when they hold meetings. I'm trying to pay my assessments, but I have no idea who to send the payment to. Those are examples of what we might place into a communication with homeowners or board complaints category. Number 2, we got elections and voting. Examples might include the board held a secret election, which they never informed the homeowners of. The HOA hasn't held an election in 4 years. the secretary is not honoring proxies. So you can see that these most likely would be categorized as elections and voting. Number 3, we got reserves. An HOA reserve account is funds that are set aside for major repair items. Typically, they're not intended to be used for regular maintenance. Examples might include the HOA board's not properly funding the reserve accounts. The president is using monies from the reserve account to pay for personal expenses. And the board borrows from the reserve accounts without homeowner approval. Up next, we got liens. A lien's a legal claim against a property used as collateral to repay a specific debt, or in our example, it would be HOA assessments. We usually don't receive too many complaints about liens, but we do commonly get asked the question, what happens if an HOA fails to register with the HOA office? In which case the answer to that is the HOA's ability to enforce the lien is suspended until they register. Number 5, insurance. So per Kiowa, HOAs must maintain property insurance on their common elements. We oftentimes receive complaints in regards to liability concerns, including things like my unit flooded and my HOA is refusing to cover repairs, or maybe my HOA is refusing to provide a copy of their insurance policy. That we might file under insurance. Number 6, we have nuisance, which according to Oxford Languages is a person, thing, or circumstance causing inconvenience or annoyance. I'm sure we all know somebody who is a nuisance in their life. Examples might include the renters next door play music loudly late into the night, or the neighbor's basketball game is too loud. It's a nuisance. Finally, the smell of marijuana smoke constantly enters my condo. Number 7, we have conflicts of interest. HOA governance policies require a conflict of interest to be in place under Kiowa. I believe it's section 209.5. Sometimes we receive complaints about potential conflicts of interest, and just to name a few, the husband and wife of Unit X down the street are on the board, the HOA board together. This is a huge conflict of interest. Or the treasurer of the HOA hired his brother's company to perform landscaping services for the community. Just examples of potential conflicts of interest. Number 8, we got landscaping. In regards to landscaping, it's important to remember landscaping changes should be made in accordance with the standards and procedures laid out in the declaration, and that any changes or decisions made on applications should not be made arbitrarily or capriciously. Examples might include the HOA said, I can't have garden gnomes out front. The grass is dead in the park and hasn't been watered all summer. And the manager hired a landscaper who cut my cherry tree down on purpose. So these are some examples of what we might see here in the HOA office that we would make the determination to file under landscaping. The HOA office frequently receives inquiries regarding parking rules and enforcement. Basically, in short, an HOA may establish parking restrictions on roads within the association. The HOA towed my vehicle is one complaint that we've seen. The same abandoned car has been sitting outside on the street for the past 12 months. I have a disability and my HOA will refuse to give me a parking space close to my unit. And I'll kind of breeze through the rest of these. Miscellaneous, we have, I was fined for installing solar panels on the roof. The HOA denied my application for solar panels. There's dog poop all around the community that is never picked up. And finally, the swimming pool is filthy. Theft fraud. The previous management company owes the HOA money. The HOA is not performing services that I'm paying dues for. Number 12, for discrimination. HOA is refusing to provide, well, generally speaking, what we see here is when the HOA refuses to provide services for a certain protected class or excludes a certain protected class from a certain benefit. For example, a landlord might be in violation of fair housing laws. 13 meetings. The HOA is not allowing people to speak prior to voting on a particular issue. I see that one a lot. The HOA is holding secret meetings, and there's never any meeting notices sent out to the community. One more here. During board meetings, homeowners are rude, belligerent, and disrespectful of others. Harassment. The board president thinks he can do whatever he wants without any repercussion. The HOA intimidates the homeowners by having the attorney present at annual meetings. Every time I drive by my neighbor's house, they snarl or give me nasty looks. Failure to produce records. I don't know how to find my HOA governing documents. I've asked for a copy of the contract with the snowplow company, but never received anything. The management company sends terrible invoices with no contact information or breakdown of dues owed. These are some examples of complaints that we receive that we might file under failure to produce records, for example. Not following governing documents. We got the board's not following their own, oops, let me skip that there. The board's not following their own governing documents. The declaration says the board has to take a unit owner vote to raise assessments, but they did not, just as an example. Excessive assessments or fees. We might see something like the HOA fined me for a completely arbitrary reason. I was fined hundreds of dollars just to provide a status letter to the buyer. And excessive attorney fees. Accounting finances. The HOA's balance sheet looks suspicious. Out of nowhere, I was charged a special assessment, and an audit has not been conducted in years. Improper selective enforcement of covenants. I was fined for having weeds when my neighbor down the street has weeds bigger than mine, and he wasn't fined. That might be a selective enforcement. I'm not allowed to have a shed while Miss X down the street is allowed to have one. Almost done here. Regulatory compliance. The HOA refuses to provide the records that I'm entitled to see as a homeowner under state law. The association's not registered with the Colorado Division of Real Estate. Might be considered a regulatory compliance complaint. Not performing repairs. The common area laundry room has been closed for 6 months with no notification of when it'll be fixed. The snow's never plowed in my neighborhood. And declarant. We don't get too many of these, but it might be something like we're pre-Kiowa and the developer didn't finish constructing the community. So what are we paying dues for? For example, more than half the homes have been sold in the community, but the declarant still appoints all the board positions. So now that I kind of went through all those, we would love to get your feedback on what additional category types do you think the HOA Center should track? Go ahead and drop it in the chat down there, and we're open to your suggestions. That is, if I haven't already covered most of everything under the sun. I'll move on here while you're thinking about that. If you had a question pertaining to your unique situation, feel free to send us an email, which is Dora_DRE_ HOA inquiries. And again, just for your reference, the underscore is to the right of the 0 on your keyboard. So if you hold down Shift, underscore is that symbol. So to wrap up our webinar today, we wanted to include some complaint statistics from our 2022 annual report. As you can see here on the graph, In 2022, we received 203 complaints related to issues surrounding communications with homeowners and the board, followed by maintenance not following HOA and the board not properly following HOA governing documents. According to this graph, about 60% of all complaints we received were directed toward the association management company, and the remaining 40% were about the HOA. 82% of all complaints received were about an HOA that is, in quote, professionally managed. Professionally managed would entail contracting out certain services like landscaping or accounting, for example, versus 18%, which were about an HOA that is self-managed, or the HOA manages and operates the association itself. So if you'd like to see a change in HOA law, we encourage you to reach out to your local legislature and share your thoughts and experiences. There's a link on the bottom here that'll help you in locating your local legislature. And we wanted to open it up to questions, see if you had any questions about our complaint intake process, about the physical form, the online process, or just questions in general about our complaint category types. And let's see if maybe David or Amanda has anything that they want to jump in here to try and answer for us.
Hey there, Nick. This is David. Just a sort of a general question that has come up a few times in the chat while Amanda and I have been monitoring it here. Just generally, I guess, what's the benefit to the homeowner in filing a complaint? What does that process do? And then more so, I guess, what do you do with the information once you've processed it, and once you've tracked it, once you've itemized, categorized it, etc.? What happens then? How does that complaint turn into some type of change or effect?
So yeah, all the data that we collect is compiled into an annual report that is posted on our website. If you go to our website, we actually go all the way back to 2011, I believe, since the office was first created, and you can view all the trends, all the statistics that we have seen that the HOA Center has received in terms of complaints, inquiries, HOA stats in general. So you can go to our website and check out the annual reports. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and then one thing I'd like to interject for everyone is that on the last slide that Nick showed you, the Find My Legislator tool is a really important aspect. Our office itself, we do not draft legislation, and without boring you about the whole legislative process, the most effective way for you to say, if you want change, if you want to see, maybe you want to have community association management companies have to be licensed again, or maybe you don't, or maybe you want to see a change in the way that budgeting is approved for HOAs, what have you. We could list a myriad of different scenarios there. The way for you as homeowners, board members, community association managers, tenants, lawyers, whatever you are, for whatever reason you are following us today or listening in on this today, is my strongest recommendation to you can be that you should really consider reaching out to your legislator, both your state representative as well as your state senator, and share your thoughts with them. Let them know, hey, I live in this place and it's run amok, or we don't have enough funds to make the requisite repairs and conduct maintenance in our community, or whatever the situation may be. Share those experiences with your legislators so that they understand what you're their constituent. whether you voted for them or not is irrelevant. But they're there to represent you. So share your thoughts with them. Let them know. There are a handful of legislators that are very attuned to issues related to HOAs in Colorado right now. That's been the case for many years, actually. But and your legislators may or may not be one of those that handful of people. However, I cannot express how important it is for you to share your thoughts with your legislator so that your legislator maybe goes and knocks on the door of one of these other legislators that has been regularly presenting legislation that pertains to HOAs. The current legislative session that we're in right now has been pretty active for HOA related, common interest community related laws, as well as real estate in general. That includes special districts, metro districts, and things like that. So it's on the forefront of a lot of different legislators' minds. But in order for it to stay on the top of their minds, I certainly would encourage you to reach out to your legislator. You can call them, you can email them, you can mail them. So that's something to keep in mind for you there. Nick, there's been a few other people that have asked questions about how do they obtain additional information about the complaints that our office receives. In the chat, I put a little bit of information about the Quora Request process. Quora, C-O-R-A, stands for the Colorado Open Records Act. And I also included a link there in the chat to where you can obtain or where you can submit a Quora request. But maybe you could talk about a little bit more about the sort of the narrative sections of the annual report that we don't say, well, there was a complaint against Nick's incredible HOA. We don't go to that level of detail in the annual report. But if someone was interested in obtaining that information, that they could get that through Quora. Would you like to mention that real quick?
Oh, yeah. Basically what you just said, David, thanks. Yeah, there's a process where you can file a Quora request to look for, I know there's some restrictions on some of the information that we're able to release, but there is a way that you can submit a Quora request for information on complaints that you're interested in.
Okay, thanks. Trisha just asked a good question, sort of a follow-up, which is it important that we suggest specific legislation to our legislators, or is it just sending our experiences and or complaints? Is that enough? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, yeah, so maybe, yeah, Dave, maybe you can back me up on this, David, but if I were you, if I was contacting the legislature, I would point out to specific statutes or a specific section of the law that you think or that you believe the HOA is in violation of. Put it in the body of your email and then specifically explain what it is they're doing that is in violation of that statute. I think that might be the best way to kind of, put it in front of them so that they understand what's currently happening, and then even provide a suggestion on what maybe you think should go there instead, or what could be a good replacement. Just to kind of help them out so that it's not too overwhelming for them. Definitely point out specific parts of Kiowa, or also the Colorado Nonprofit Corporation Act is also a good one. Even your HOA governing documents. Sometimes there's pretty clear violations within your documents. So the more details you have in writing, I think the better.
I would agree with that. And Nick just mentioned so much of the time in our forums we talk about Kiowa, CCIOA, the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, but there is a whole nother body of law that directly pertains to your common interest communities, and that's the Colorado Nonprofit Corporation Act. And so if I know Nick provides this information, and Amanda does as well, provides the current laws, both Kiowa as well as the Nonprofit Corporation Act, to parties upon request. Of course, it's also available for download on our website. However, if you're ever looking or interested in obtaining a copy of that, of the most recent law, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office, and we can easily forward that to you and provide that to you. It's available on the internet as well. However, when you search for it on the internet, sometimes you might not get the latest, the most recent, and as I mentioned a little earlier, we're in the middle of the legislative session. Some of those laws might change a little bit. So once that session passes or ends and the governor signs some bills, theoretically, let's just say, that's going to, an older version will it might not have the latest and greatest information. So our website will always, as soon as those new publications are available, we do provide those to everyone, so that upon request, so that you can make sure that you are referencing the current law, not the law from 2019 or what have you. In the chat here, Nick, a couple people have said, "Hey, I've had good experiences reaching out to my legislators in the past." So there's definitely that aspect that I would encourage a lot of people to. It is worth some time. Composing an email, making a quick phone call can be the change, because you yourself are one person, but your legislators are very smart people. They're paying attention. They have aides that are paying attention to this, and they're looking for trends. They're looking for things. It doesn't mean they have to hear from more than one person in order to want to take some action. One incident can be enough in some cases, but the more people that do reach out about some of these issues that you're seeing in your communities, the more effective they will be. You will be in convincing them being your legislators, to try to take those changes. Sherry just submitted a question. Yes, we are recording this webinar, and this webinar will be available for viewing sometime probably early next week. Once we do, we'll get it uploaded. I will go ahead and put into the chat here the link where you will be able to find that, and again, usually by Monday or Tuesday of next week, it will be available. So I'm just scrolling down, and I'm going to get that and put that into the that link for you in just a few seconds.
Yeah, I turned my video back on because I figured you guys didn't want to just stare at my face as David was talking. But there was a question posed from Robert earlier. I just want to reiterate here. Robert's question is, are complaints forwarded to the named HOA board and or community manager? To reiterate, no, they're not. We do not share your complaint with the respondent. In this case, most of the time it's the HOA. We don't forward them any documents you send us. That's not to say that it's not Quora or Colorado Open Records requests. David, did you want to touch a little bit more on that?
I'd say generally, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that in general. So I've got another question from Brian, which is, can the office field complaints that are not just being filed against the community associations or their service providers? What about homeowner behavior, legislative intended consequences, etc., that adversely affect communities? I'll answer that one real quick. Yes, we although we track our complaints based on the homeowner association name, I mean, oftentimes the complaints explain this is a complaint against my management company. Again, we track the information based on the HOA, because that's the registration information that Amanda collects, is the name, the address, the type of community, the size of the community, the location of the community, things of that sort. So that's the basis for our tracking that we use here in the HOA Center. However, you can certainly, if you have a dispute with another homeowner, oftentimes those disputes, for instance, might also include the board, not maybe because the board you don't feel is taking action against this issue that you have with your neighbor. Maybe your neighbor has a junkyard or is running a business in the backyard of their property, and that's against the HOA's rules, the covenants, the declarations, what have you. That might very well be the case. So yes, you can file complaints against us. We suss that out. We work through that, determine whether it's actually a complaint against the board, if it's a complaint against your neighbor, or if it's a complaint against the management company, or the declarant, as another option. So we do that. So most certainly you can definitely submit those complaints to us, and we work through those complaints in order to get to the root of what it is. And of course, if we have some information that we can then in turn give back to you, let's say, oh, well, this sounds like it has to do with production of documents that you are entitled to as a homeowner. We want to give you that information. So a complaint is not just a one-way street. We do respond, we acknowledge those complaints, and we do want to give you information or access to resources that will help you with that, with you getting one step closer to a solution or a resolution of those of that issue. We certainly do our very best to try to help you out in that respect. As Nick mentioned, of course, we can't provide you legal advice, and we don't act as an advocate. We don't get in there and shake our fingers at the board members for you if your complaint is related to that. But we do try to help you and to arm you with that information, so that you better understand what your rights and responsibilities are, and that you better understand what the board in this example is supposed to be doing, or what the management or the declarant is supposed to be doing in these situations. So we do our very best to try to make that valuable, and have that interaction with our office still bear some fruit, to be helpful for you.
Thanks for that input, David. I just wanted to, I noticed Candace's remark, and I just thought it was worth repeating here. Candace, you mentioned you went to your legislatures back in 2014 with documentation in Kiowa sections. One of them believed in my request and passed bills to improve things for HOA owners. So that's always an interesting thing to hear, a nice thing to hear. If you felt like sharing more information in the chat, I'm sure people would like to hear more about that.
Hey Nick, I have a question from Peter. I know David mentioned earlier about what I collect as far as with the registration process. Peter is actually wanting to know, and he's interested in seeing how many HOAs are self-managed. For those who want that information, it is public information. It's on our website, but I did pull that up for you, and just to give you an exact number, there are 7,888 active HOAs currently that are self-managed, and there are 2,737 they are also registered. They're also self-managed, but they are expired HOAs. So I guess I did the math for that, but in total, that's 10,625 self-managed HOAs in Colorado currently.
Yeah, to follow up on Amanda's comment there, generally speaking, it's the trend that we've seen since about 2019, when the CAM program came to an end. The basic proportions are about 80% of the communities in Colorado are professionally managed in one form or another, or to some extent or another. That could be a full service management, or it could be they're only doing accounting, and that the board manages the rest. And then the remaining 20% is what have been self-identified or identified to us, to our office, as being self-managed, which would mean that there is not a professional management company in there doing things on a day-to-day basis with them. Another comment that Gary brought up here, which is a great one, is one thing that this presentation didn't really address is what if someone has a complaint against an attorney? Maybe you feel that the attorney that represents the board is charging excessive fees, or they're giving bad advice, or you've maybe on the flip side, you've hired a lawyer to defend your case, whatever side you are, board member, homeowner, doesn't matter. And you're unhappy with that representation. If you don't feel that they did a good job, they didn't exercise competency and things of that sort. There is a process by which attorneys in the state of Colorado you can file complaints against them, and you can, for that information, you could reach out if you simply Googled or searched on the internet the Colorado Supreme Court. They have an office. All lawyers in Colorado are licensed by the Colorado Supreme Court, and they have an office called the Office of Attorney Regulation. The Office of Attorney Regulation does conduct investigations and can issue penalties and fees and fines, and even take away an attorney's license for things. Now, this is different than a civil case, which would be like legal malpractice. You may have a claim in court yourself for something like that, but complaints themselves can be submitted to the Office of Attorney Regulation in the Colorado Supreme Court. So that is an important thing. We have heard certainly callers have called in and said, "Hey, I hired this lawyer and they're doing they did a bad job, and they left me worse off than I was before." I'm not saying that's true or not true. I don't know that. But there is that course that you could take, that route you could take if you feel that there's something that you'd like the Office of Attorney Regulation to investigate on your behalf.
Just going through some more questions here. Robert asked, what percentage of units in HOAs are professionally managed versus self-managed? So generally speaking, the HOA encompasses all of the units, and all of the units will either be professionally managed or self-managed, if that makes sense. All the units are kind of under the umbrella of one HOA, not most of the time, not multiple HOAs. I mean, you might have a master association and a sub-association to that extent, but for the most part, each HOA is either going to be professionally managed or self-managed. All right, let's see. Any other questions? Let's see. Now's the time. If you guys had any questions that you wanted to pose and see if we could try and answer for you, please do it now. If not, our email address is on the screen there. It's a little 5 minutes to 2 o'clock. So we'll just see if any last minute questions here come up.
Robert asked a question, which is whether we track any fines that are levied against an association for failure to produce financial records. What Robert's referring to there is a law that was passed in the 2021 legislative session. Forgive me, because I don't know, I can't recall the number of the bill off the top of my head, but he in the chat here he cites what the bill changed in Kiowa, which is section 317. Subsection 4.5. Unfortunately, Robert, our office does not do that, and the reason for that is because that happens in civil court. You don't. There's not the law as it's written doesn't make a process that simply says, "Well, you didn't give me my documents, so you have to cut me a check for $50 per day, up to a total of $500." That's an amount that is something that would be awarded by a judge in court, or by settlement between the parties, which certainly could happen as well. So we don't have specific data on that. It's oftentimes that is probably a part of a multi-claim issue that you'd have would if that a homeowner would very likely bring forth against their board. However, it is very likely that your association itself would likely have a breakdown of that of those types of fees and fines, court fees and fines of that sort that they would put onto their accounting records for your association. So you could take since as a unit owner you're entitled to obtaining copies of those accounting records and the like. You could maybe parse through that a little bit and see if you see some fines that that could be associated with fees and fines of that nature, like that $500 max fine. It's actually $500 maximum, or the actual expense or amount of damages that is caused by a board's failure to produce those records. It's not just financial or insurance records, it's actually any records that says, hey, I want a copy of our current bylaws. If they've refused to provide you copies of the bylaws for that period of time, this same section 317 subsection 4.5 could be triggered for you. But again, it's through a civil lawsuit, so so we don't have those records directly. If you were really interested in doing this, you could reach out to each and every court and see if there's a way that you could obtain that type of information from the court. Although I have to be absolutely honest with you, it'd probably be a pretty tall order to reach out to each and every one of the county and district courts, as well as the submall claims courts in every one of the counties that we have here in Colorado. So, but certainly start on a local level. Starting with your own association.
Well, let's see. Sue asked a question. Amanda, maybe you want to take this one? If not, when are HOA registration fees due?
When are they due? Is that what it says?
Yeah. Sue asked when, I guess, what date are HOA registration fees?
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, okay, I see that. Okay, so easy. Okay, so HOA registration, as far as the renewal goes, it is the 1-year anniversary of exactly when it was first registered. So, for example, if an HOA is registered today, April 21st, 2023, it won't expire until April 21st, 2024. So it's literally exactly 1 year out from the initial registration date. A lot of people ask us also, as far as the Secretary of State goes, same thing with them. It depends on exactly what date and what day the initial registration was.
All right, thanks, Amanda.
Welcome.
Well, I think we're gonna call it here. If you guys have any additional questions, again, feel free to shoot them here to Dora_DRE_HOA inquiries. We'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can. We really much appreciate you guys coming to these HOA webinars. We're glad to hear that you find them somewhat informative and helpful. If you had any suggestions, feel free to let us know. But in that case, we will wish you a happy rest of your Friday, and we hope you have a great weekend. Again, thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you guys later.